Hello and welcome to another edition of Anime Reviews on the Fallout Experiment, where I, the Vault Dweller, are going to be your host. Today we're going to be talking about the anime Bleach. Yes, Bleach, probably one of my favorite and simultaneously one of the most disappointing animes that I've ever seen, simply because I feel like this anime starts out with a really strong premise that I would have really liked to see explored more, but then turns into kind of one of those typical Dragon Ball Z styled go find and kill the bad type things. And I'm really I'm really more of a character driven type thing, and Bleach started out that way, like I said, and then disappointed me by becoming much more focused on fighting. And while the fighting was cool, I didn't really like that. So let's get into why and how. So, like I said, Bleach started out with a really strong premise as far as I'm concerned, and that premise was basically our main character, Ichigo Kurosaki, lives in a town. I can't remember the name of the place right now, but he lives in this town, and his entire life he's seen spirits, so he's not really too freaked out when he sees these things running around, because it's something he just kind of grew up with, and I guess if you grew up with that, you'd be used to it by now too. Which is something I like, because it doesn't really confuse the person, and they explain it in a way that you're like, okay, well, I don't have any more questions, and that's always good. And so anyway, he's a pretty good guy. His family, his dad runs a hospital. And he has two sisters. He's very protective of them, even though he's kind of got a gruff attitude. Anyway, so he kind of helps these spirits. Sort of tries to help them move on. He's kind of like a spirit consultant. And then he comes across Rukia Kuchiki, who is a Soul Reaper, a Shinigami in the Japanese. I prefer Soul Reaper because A, that name is badass, and B, Shinigami. I know that they help spirits move on, but they don't really play a role in the process of death. And I mean, I don't really know how Shinigamis work. I just assume it's the same as the Grim Reaper, so I might just be being ignorant right now. And if I am, I'm sorry. Feel free to correct me. But anyway, she comes in because there's a hollow, and she she's hanging. She ends up hanging around Ichigo because it's gonna come towards him. But once she realizes Ichigo can see him, there's this whole thing, and they have. And to make a long story short, basically the hollow ends up attacking and blah blah blah. Ichigo wants to defend his family because they're under attack too. And even though he's a human, he possesses a lot of spiritual power, which we'll get into why and all that later. And so, he uses that, and then Rukia. Oh, sorry about my voice. Rukia tries to protect him, but fails. Well, she doesn't really fail. She protects him, but hurts herself, and so she transfers her powers to him, making him a Soul Reaper. So he protects his family, and he has this giant ass Zanpakuto, which is what the swords are called, and like they go over how like the size of the sword kind of shows how much spiritual energy you have or spiritual pressure, and his is huge like Cloud Buster sword big, and that's really like Ruki is just blown the hell away with that. So anyway, he kills this one hollow, and we'll get into more about what hollows are. But anyway, so the first season, roughly, of the show is Ichigo coming into being this Soul Reaper and killing hollows. And I guess now's as good a time as any to get into hollows. Hollows pretty much are what happens when a spirit is left in the human world. You see, sometimes spirits are stuck in the human world because they're dwelling on things, and it's the job of a Soul Reaper. At least the Soul Reapers have two jobs. A is to exterminate hollows, and B is to guide the souls of humans that are stuck or lost into the Soul Society, really into either heaven or hell, which is a pretty cool premise. And Ichigo has to step into this role, and he doesn't really want to. And it's really interesting, I think, to have a hero who doesn't really want to be the hero. I mean, you don't really see that kind of thing most of the time, like with something like Naruto or Dragon Ball Z or something like that. A lot of the time the hero wants to be the hero, and I know there was a arc in Naruto when they went on their first mission where Naruto was afraid, and that was one of the things I liked about that arc is because Naruto was afraid. Um, and with Ichigo, it's not so much he's afraid; he just doesn't feel like he wants to risk his life for strangers. So Rukia takes him to this park where this kid's about to be attacked by a hollow, and basically holds him back and by telling him, "Look, if you're going to do this, you have to save them all," and give them this big lecture. And Ichigo basically says "fuck all" and goes in for it. I and basically ends up saying he's not necessarily going to go full frontal into this job. He's just not going to let people who are directly in front of him be hurt. So he's very kind of baby stepping into the role of a hero, and I really enjoy that. That's something very cool about this show, at least in the beginning. And so, basically from there you progress and you learn more about Rukia, kind of, but mostly you learn about Ichigo and his life, and you end up learning that his mother died when he was young because he saw what essentially was a ghost, or you're told it's a ghost, and he didn't know at the time because he was like, I think 6 or 7. So his mom ended up dying, and he blames himself for that, and it's one of those, it's a very, very touching thing because you can get into this whole debate about how it's harder to care for his mom because you haven't really interacted with his mom, but it's still very, very, it's a struggle that we can all go through where we do or make a mistake and we feel like this is our fault and nobody's mad at you, so you beat yourself up even more because you feel like they should be. And there's this whole thing where he has to come to terms with that, and that involves him fighting and nearly dying in this battle. And, it's one of my favorite moments in Bleach, and again, that brings up the whole point of there's a lot of character in it, a lot of character development, and even with his friends, there's like a lot of getting to know them and a lot of the way that they work and who they are. Really, the only one of his friends that becomes a main character that I really can't stand is Orihime. She has orange hair, kind of like he does, and I just can't get over. I just don't like her even a little bit. I hate her so much. And don't get me wrong, I can understand the appeal to her character, but she's kind of a dumbass. And here's a couple reasons why. First of all, Orihime is essentially, they do the same thing with Rukia, and Rukia kind of have a problem with her too. Really, this actually goes for any male or female character in any anime, show, movie, or game ever. I hate them when they can take care of themselves, and they can, but they get captured and they are being saved. Like, again, with Rukia, when she gets captured, which we'll get in more to later, it makes sense why she gets captured, and it kind of makes sense why Orihime gets captured. But I don't like that. It bugs me when they can't take care of themselves. And with Orihime, and even sometimes with Rukia, they'll be in fights where somebody comes in and helps them. More times with Orihime, and I really can't get over that. And she's also very ditzy, and it's not that she's stupid. If you've ever played the game Persona 3, there's a character called Yukari, and Yukari is actually Rukia's voice actor. But she's not stupid. She's book smart, but she has no common sense. And she acts very ditzy and overreacts a lot. And I think Orihime kind of has that. And I think part of it's supposed to be comic relief, and I don't know. I just can't get over it. It bugs me. It bugs the hell out of me, and I really just can't. I don't like her character at all. But most of the characters I like, specifically Chad Yusato. At least I think his last name's Yusato, but Chad, who's half Japanese, half, I think, Mexican. And he's an interesting character because he's very big and very strong. And when he was younger, I wish you would have got to see more of this character development, but you see when he fights that he doesn't really like to let loose because he's so big and so strong that he's hurt people, and his grandpa told him not to do that, and that if he kept doing that, he was either going to have to choose to be kind of this evil, kind of this mean person, or he can protect people. And when his grandpa died, I think it sunk in that he didn't want to be this person that was causing trouble and hurting people and starting fights anymore. So, there you can see, and there's even character development where like he has to let loose, and he comes to terms with that part a little bit, and I really think that's interesting. But anyway, getting back on track here. Uh, there's a lot of character development, and there's like Rukia developing and becoming more and more used to being human, and developing friendships and relationships and all this other stuff. And the whole issue with the hollows and the spirits, and I think that would have been that show right there, what I've just described to you, would have been much more interesting if they would have stuck with that formula, because it would have shown somebody who's two people who are displaced from their normal roles. Ichigo, who is now taking on this role of kind of being this hero when he doesn't necessarily want to, and Rukia, who is now taking on this role of being kind of innocent and being very vulnerable, and she's not used to that. I think that would have been much more interesting to see, especially when you get into like the hollows thing, and you could have done a lot with that. I feel like a lot of character development and a lot of really surreal, weird things, and there could have been big bads, but they would have been, there would have been more of a personal battle with things, and there would have been a lot more helping. It essentially, it would have been like Yu Yu Hakusho, I think, and the guy who created Bleach was a creator for Yu Yu Hakusho, but it would have been kind of like Yu Yu Hakusho, but with more of the spirit detective than Yu Yu Hakusho even had, and I would have really thought that would be interesting. The quest of a hero who doesn't really want to be a hero, and then there are these other factors that come in that kind of mess with him, and I think that would have been a very, very interesting thing to see, but instead Rukia gets captured, and again, it's understandable why, and they go after her, and pretty much from the point that she gets captured and they go after her, the show becomes, in my opinion, more about the fighting and more about the big sword battle than anything else, and I don't like that. I mean, I know Yu Yu Hakusho had that tournament arc, and there's going to be a lot of comparisons to Yu Yu Hakusho. There are a lot of differences, but there are a lot of similarities. And Yu Yu Hakusho had a tournament arc, but there was still some kind of developments going on there. And I don't know. He's a spirit detective, so he just kind of goes where he's told. And I know it's important to save Rukia and blah blah blah, but it never. And even in Yu Yu Hakusho, it kind of bugged me. And I don't know. I don't really like that they turned it more into about the big sword battles than the characters, and especially when they started introducing the character of Zangetsu, because Zanpakuto are kind of living swords and are connected to the person's spirit, and so you have to know their name. And there were I feel like there could have been a relationship and like a whole other factor to that, and I don't know. I feel like there should have just not turned it into a battle thing. Or after saving Rukia, gone back, but instead they did the bounce in the anime, and then there was the Iran car and everything, and then it turned into this giant war, and that became basically the rest of it, and up until now, where there's another giant war. I mean, Jesus. But I never really got into that part of it, and I still read it, much like Naruto, I have fun reading it, and it's not the worst thing I've ever seen or read, but it's become more of like a shut your mind off and watch kind of thing than anything else, and I just really don't fucking like that. Let's see, what else can I say about Bleach? Well, I guess let's talk about the music in Bleach, because we talked about the music in Naruto and I should be consistent in these. But anyway, music in Bleach I like more than Naruto. There are moments where it's just kind of that fuck yeah moment, that there's a big battle going on, and they do have a theme for that, and I do like that theme because it gets your blood pumping. Yeah! But mostly I like the other music, the more subtle stuff. For example, there's this part in Bleach where Ichigo's trying to get his Soul Reaper powers back, and when that's happening, his spirit chain severed. So I'm pretty sure Ichigo's dead, by the way. I'm pretty sure they kill him, technically, by the rules of the show. But anyway, so they sever his chain, and it starts to corrode and eat itself. And it's really surreal, too. It's like a Salvador Dali thing, or like a David Lynch movie. This chain's just eating itself, and it's going to eat through his soul. I mean, man, that is some scary shit. But So that starts to happen, right? And you're like, okay, this is scary. And there's this weird kind of like warped music going on that's kind of cerebral, and I really, really like that. That's really cool. Um, I absolutely love those scenes because it's really creepy. Like, what's going on is so creepy, and the music just makes it creepier, and I just love it. You know, I love when you watch an anime that can be creepy like that, and Bleach does do that very well. There's moments in that show where it's very creepy, like his the stuff with his inner hollow later is kind of creepy because it looks just like him, but like the way it talks and the way it acts, it's very brutish and very psychotic. It's kind of like the Joker, you know. I'm gonna make this pencil disappear. My Joker accent's terrible. I need to work on that, but it's just really creepy stuff, and I really, really enjoy that. But again, like I said, it becomes, you know, and that's another thing. Like, they do work on the struggle for that, but I feel like there could have been maybe more, like more of a struggle with that than there was. And the Inner Hollow even promises Ichigo to be back, and it kind of does, but I feel like there should have been a more of a struggle because they kind of let it happen where Ichigo's being down, and then Rukia fixes it, and then Ichigo starts being down again. And I really feel like they should have, you know, exercised through that more before just completely fixing it. And then once they fixed it, I mean, because Ichigo's Hollow is very determined not to just be put down, they should have had him resurface in a different way than just, oh man, he's dead, and it just back. I don't know. But, like I said, there were a lot of interesting ideas in Bleach, especially in the first season. And even after that, there was some really good stuff. And it's an anime I would recommend. It's a pretty good action anime. It's pretty fun. It's just, like I said, I really like stuff that derives from the characters. You know, there's stuff like, and action is always good. Action is always good. But again, much like Naruto, it's too much about the action. Thankfully, though, there's not the weird political commentary in it. But that's just because I didn't like that. But there's still a lot of like weird character growth in it too. Like Ichigo gets over the whole mother thing. That's another thing I want to talk about. Like, he comes to terms with his mom, and I think that's really cool that he does that. But he does that, and he never really seems happier. I mean, I think he is happier, but he never really seems happier. And I mean, he's just always scowling, and I don't know. I kind of feel like he should have smiled and been a little more loose and stuff as the series progressed. He never really seemed to be, unless it was comedic relief. Rukia had some good character development, though. She became much more human and much more comedic, actually, which I really liked. Orihime, I think, got a little bit better, but still not by much. Yeah, like I said, there's some pretty good character development in this, actually. They're just sometimes, like, Ichigo goes through the same thing a lot. It's kind of like in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, how Buffy goes through pretty much everything a million times and never learns her damn lesson. Ichigo kind of does that, but kind of doesn't. He goes through this whole, like, I'm weak, I can't protect anybody thing a lot, and it gets old. You know, the same song and dance always gets old after a while. No matter how many times you like the song, and no matter how many times you like to dance, that dance will get old, you know? Can't eat chicken every meal. But, that being said, the first time it happens, or the first two times it happens, it's pretty interesting. And like I said, Rukia and even Rukia's brother, actually, Byakuya, has some big character development, because he's all about the dignity of the Kuchiki household and blah 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 blah. And like, there's this weird part where he says it's because he's doing this to protect Rukia, or like he makes it seem like he's not the bad guy, but in that situation he was pretty much the fucking bad guy. I don't know. They goofed that up, I think. They made that confusing. I mean, he's not an evil dude, but he was the bad guy in that situation when he was trying to, like, was letting his sister die. He didn't fight that. I think he said he couldn't, or like the household would lose its honor, and Ichigo basically had the same response I did, which is like, fuck your honor, this is your family, you know? And the love of his life told him to protect Rukia with his life, and he's not doing that. I mean, that's just... But after that, he becomes much more... He redeems himself a lot, and though he is still kind of cold and crass, he becomes very dependable and and protects Rukia very well. after that, and I really like that happened. That he like let go of the love of his honor, and like I think there's even a point where Rukia thinks he's gonna be upset, and all he says is like something like not even relating to her performance in that battle or whatever, and I really thought that was good. But anyway, that's my review of Bleach. It's pretty good. I recommend taking a look at it. I liked it more than Naruto. I will say that. Um, so, if you're looking for an action anime that has decent character development and actually ties in some of the weird Ichigo being super awesome bullshit pretty well, then Bleach is for you. If you're wanting something that's more character driven, though, I would recommend something else. But, overall, Bleach is a good watch and a good read. So, anyway, that's the Vault Dweller signing off for now. Have a good one, guys.